What's happening, everybody? It is Friday night, 6 p.m. Great to have you guys here. Thanks so much for joining me. I see a lot of you out there in the audience. Awesome. So glad you guys are going to be here with me over the next bit of time. And we got kind of a double header going on, a super double header, because right after this, I'm going on Valhalla with Nate. So you guys can roll on over there at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific time, and we will continue the journey and continue the conversation. Hey, Mark, what's going on? Becky, how are you? Steve, what's up, brother? Awesome. Jasmine, how are you? Good to see you. Good to see you in the chat. Lisa. All right. And we're going to get going here. We got some good stuff to talk about. I'm going to be deep diving today, doing a bit of a deep dive. It's been a while since I've covered the chaos, since I've gone into it a little bit each week, but since I've really gone deep on it and talked about, World War III type of stuff. And so I'm going to jump in there and we're going to talk about this. And particularly today, what I'm going to be going into is really going to be deep diving into the whole Venezuela situation. Okay. So we're going to be talking about what is going on with Venezuela. What's the U.S. policy there? Why are we blowing up all these boats? Okay, not to make light of it, but what is happening? Just all of a sudden, it seems like we have a massive military buildup, and if you haven't been paying attention, all of a sudden we're pretty much poised for war. We're going to talk about the implications, what the situation is, why it's important. Okay, potential for military action, why it matters, Russia, China, geopolitics, all those things like that. Okay. Then after that, I'm going to jump into the U.S. economy a little bit, just for a brief dip. We're going to talk a little about Bitcoin, a little bit about the market. Okay. And then we're going to end it with our usual comedy satire with the leadership lessons of South Park. Although I don't know what kind of leadership lessons I'm going to draw tonight from all these things, but we shall see. So super excited about it. Great to have you guys here. And again, thanks so much for joining me. What's going on, Phoenix? How you doing? Steve, I already got you as well. What's going on, brother? Good to have you. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to open this up with this first video. And if you guys notice, I changed up the camera a little bit today. I had a little bit of a tech issue, software issue, actually, not a tech issue, really a software issue. And so we are old school right now, but I think it should be, all the functionality should still be good and all that stuff. So let's see. I'm going back to the old stuff here, old way. Let's see what I can do. All right. Let me see if I can make this work. Okay, here we go. Let's get right into this situation and see what is going on. All right, everybody. Let's do it.
Since September, the Trump administration has ordered at least 21 strikes against alleged drug boats. More than 80 people have been killed. For more on this, I want to bring in former ambassador to Venezuela, James Story. He's also the founding partner of Global Frontier Advisors. Thank you for being here, Ambassador. Why is the Trump administration focusing so intently on Venezuela when it comes to fighting narco-terrorists?
Well, I think the president ran on 4 or 5 different platforms that centered on Venezuela. You've got the migration issue, you have the illegality issue. Trinidad Agua obviously is another piece of this. But fundamentally, you can look at the human rights abuses, the instability in the region, narcotics flowing north from Venezuela, the fact that Maduro is still in power after losing an election. So there's a democracy issue here. And writ large, the fact that they are working with some of our strategic competitors, Russia and China, but obviously also Cuba and Iran. So there are a number of reasons why the president's been focused on Venezuela. Obviously, the Venezuelan people have already spoken as well when they voted Maduro out of office last year.
And our partners at the BBC have confirmed 4 U.S. military aircraft were flying near Venezuela last night. That includes a long-range bomber, a surveillance aircraft, a fighter jet, and a refueling tanker. Does it look like we're about to go to war with Venezuela? What do you make of the military buildup in the region?
Well, it's certainly not a counter-narcotics operation. I ran counter-narcotics in the Western Hemisphere for the State Department and also in Colombia. Normally what we would do is judicialize cases. We'd be using Whitehalls, Coast Guard cutters, and we'd be capturing people, judicializing the case, interrogating the crew, and indicting them for narcotics trafficking. What we have in the region is entirely too much firepower for that particular mission set.
All right. So he's got a lot to say there, obviously. Okay. And I think one of the key pieces here to understand is just, we have a big buildup of military power in the region. It's originally been said to be a counter narcotics operation. However, when we look at what's at stake, geopolitically with Russia, with China, okay, the geopolitical situation, is it just a counter narcotics operation? So let's talk a little bit about, and just what is it exactly? Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about the history and the situation. All right. And get into this so we can have a better understanding. 'Cause I don't know about you guys, but I felt like for a while, I see we're blowing up the boats, but then all of a sudden I'm hearing about I think it's the carrier battle group that moved down there. I believe it was the Truman that moved down there. A big naval buildup, Marines being down there, CIA authorized covert operations. The president admitted to that, lethal operations inside of Venezuela. So many things I feel like have been happening that I almost felt like this story was getting away from me as I tend to focus over on Russia and on Ukraine and on China. But when you're focusing on Russia and China, you have to focus on Venezuela as well too. And we're gonna see some clips about that. We're also going to discuss just why it's so important. So, okay, let's start off with some of the geopolitics here with China and Russia. First of all, to understand that his predecessor was Chavez, right? And Maduro isn't a revolutionary, charismatic revolutionary like Chavez. He's a survivalist CEO in a failing state. Okay, you got to understand that. He basically has a board of directors, and he's the board on the board of directors, and his military and his lifeline for the military and everything else is foreign patrons. Okay, Russia uses him to poke Washington in its own backyard and to keep a hand on Venezuelan oil. Make no mistake, they have huge resources there, okay? They're a very, very stable, huge reserve of oil in Venezuela. So China is very interested in them because of the reserves of oil. Russia is very interested in them because of their oil reserves. And Venezuela loves Russia because of the OPEC connections, okay? There's an OPEC plus connection, whereas the big hitters for OPEC basically are Saudi Arabia and Russia. Okay, those are the heavy hitters that call the shots, really are able to influence the price the most. And Venezuela finds that really important for them. Okay, and they're big allies of Russia because Russia single-handedly can really sway the oil price and therefore put a lot of money in Venezuela's pockets. Okay, and so when a country has more money, they're bolder. They're going to take more risks. They're all these things like that. All right. So that's a big connection right there. But Russia does use Venezuela to poke Washington in its own backyard and keep a hand on Venezuelan oil. They send advisors and arms as well too. They've been dealing arms since, probably around 2000 or so, around there. Been dealing weapons, missiles, you name it, and sending advisors as well too. Most recently, I guess a large Russian transport aircraft landed amid all these things going on, the naval buildup in Venezuela, and they're saying that they most likely offloaded advisors, technology, all kinds of things. Okay, so mercenaries, we don't know. On China's part, China uses Maduro as a long-term energy hedge. Okay, they use Venezuela as an energy hedge. And it's basically a showcase for development without lectures, right? So they've invested billions in the region, in Venezuela, actually, Russia and China have. And for the U.S. with Maduro, with Venezuela, he's a narco-authoritarian problem, right? For Beijing and Moscow, he's useful. He's an asset for the longer game of great power competition, okay? And so for Venezuelan energy, we're just going to talk about this really quickly as well, too. All right. I talked about the OPEC plus situation, OPEC countries plus non-OPEC partners, mainly Russia, Kazakhstan, and Mexico. All right. So what they do is they coordinate how much oil to pump. Okay. So they can influence global oil prices. It's stable. They can stabilize markets in theory. And in practice, Saudi Arabia and Russia are the power center, as I said before, inside OPEC plus. And when they agree on cuts or on increases, the rest mostly fall in line. Okay. And so for Venezuela, OPEC plus really matters because Venezuela sits on huge reserves, but they have crazy wrecked production capacity because of their crazy political situation. Okay. And any OPEC plus decision that raises prices gives Caracas more revenue per barrel. So they love Russia, right? Russia's in the inner circle of OPEC plus. And so that's a huge tie with Russia and Caracas in Venezuela. Russia's role in OPEC also deepens the Moscow-Caracas energy relationship. They coordinate at the cartel level and in specific joint ventures. All right. So that's the situation basically for energy and for the geopolitical situation. Now, I think it's really important to notice, very important to note that this in Venezuela, why has there been so much problem? Well, the regime basically has a criminal network and narcotics connection. Okay. The Venezuelan leadership is under Nicolas Maduro is accused by the U.S. of being deeply intertwined with drug trafficking networks. All right. In particular, the Cartel of the Suns. Okay. More or less. Okay. Cartel de los Soles. And they're deeply intertwined with drug trafficking networks and other transnational criminal operations. And the U.S. government, has designated various groups like the Tren de Agua as a narco-terrorist organization linked to Venezuelan territory. All right. The U.S. also frames the narcotics flow from Venezuela or via Venezuela through the Caribbean as a national security threat. Okay. So drugs, narco-terrorism, border control, all linked. Mass migration, sending out a lot of their unwanted people across out in boats into the U.S., all of these things. I believe there was a 7 million person outflow from Venezuela that ended up going towards the U.S. or in the U.S. over the last 20 years, something like that. I might be wrong, might be a lot more, but those are the numbers I have in front of me. If you know better, put it in the chat. Okay. So, and again, great to have you guys here. Super Slam, what's going on? And as Jasmine said, hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed and you're watching this on the replay or you're here live, subscribe as well too. It helps us all out, helps the channel out, helps me to go and get bigger interviews and bigger guests in the future. All right, so let's go ahead and check out another video here on this whole situation. Okay, let's see. Got a little something. I think this is a good one here.
CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us now live from Puerto Rico, where the U.S. military is stepping up its presence as it builds up an effort toward what they say are drug traffickers in Venezuela. Charlie, good morning. What is the president saying about his potential next steps for what seems to be an expanding operation?
Well, the president is saying now, well, first of all, I have to paint the picture here. We're here at the Roosevelt Roads Naval Station. You probably haven't heard of it because it's been closed down since 2004, but it is open for business. You got F-35 fighter jets in that direction. They don't like us shooting that because of operational security reasons, but locals tell us these things are taking off at 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, pretty much every day. In fact, we're expecting them to take off soon. And additionally, what's rolled into the neighborhood yesterday is the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier we've all been waiting for. We got confirmation ourselves from the Navy that it crossed into the Caribbean. On board, you've got 4 squadrons of fighter jets that are here. And now with all of that military hardware in place, President Trump says he's now ready to talk. Here's what he had to say.
We may be having some discussions with Maduro, and we'll see how that turns out. They would like to talk.
Interesting. The president says they would like to talk. So what do we know about this U.S. strikes conducted over the weekend?
Yeah, so we found out about this from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. It was actually yesterday we found out, but it happened on Saturday. He said that 3 male narco-terrorists, his words, were killed in this strike. And I have to point out that this happened in the Eastern Pacific. Now, we're around the Mediterranean. That's where a lot of this focus is taking place, a lot of focus on Venezuela, possibly on Venezuela regime change and land strikes. plenty of military hardware in place to conduct those strikes now. But this is in the Eastern Pacific. And when we point in that direction, you're looking at the runs between Colombia and Mexico, which is a route. It's a very popular route among drug runners. So we've had a split of strikes on suspected drug smuggling boats here in Venezuela, or excuse me, here in the Caribbean region, but also in the Eastern Pacific. And at last count, I think we're looking at least 83 people have been killed over the course of 22 strikes now. So this is adding up, and we're told it will continue to add up.
All right. All right. So we heard it there. What's going on? A little more word on the street. And I think, it's important to understand one thing, that we have a lot of capability that's out there right now. No doubt about it. There's a lot of capability. But the one thing to know, like in any type of strategy making, is that capability does not necessarily mean a threat. So capability plus intention to use it, that equals a threat. Okay. And so you have to really consider and see, hey, Jill, how's it going? Good to have you there too. And you have to also consider what kind of threat do we actually pose to Venezuela? And again, we discussed a little bit about China's influence and Russia's influence. Okay. And we're going to hear more about that later, and just what the strategic calculus is and why the U.S. may or may not want to invade or do additional actions against Venezuela. And again, the important thing is, I think, like I said, I'm keeping my eyes so much on Russia and Ukraine. I felt like this was passing me by. And I think it's a great way for all of us to immerse ourselves in this topic and talk a bit about it and see just why it's important and exactly what's going on. And do we have to be afraid of World War III opening up on another front? I mean, possibly. Okay, so let's explore this a little bit more. So we discussed the regime, the criminal networks, the narcotics nexus. Let's talk about U.S. strategic posture and declarations. We've shown that we're doing a major buildup in the Caribbean. All right, naval assets, amphibious ships, you name it. The Marines are there, destroyers, submarines, aircraft carriers. I guess it's the Ford. The Gerald R. Ford is the aircraft carrier there. We shifted from doing sanctions to actually doing strikes. And as he said, we've already killed allegedly 83 people in these strikes on boats. Okay. And we're not just using diplomatic and financial pressure anymore. We're actually, conducting military force, using military force against targets that are now narco targets. Okay. And it's interesting, but what the justification for this is that on October 1st, 2025, the U.S., basically the Trump administration, notified Congress that it regards itself to be in non-international armed conflict, okay, with unlawful combatants. I think this is pretty unprecedented, okay? And put in the chat if I'm wrong about that, but I don't think this has been used with that type of language before. Usually they have an authorization for the use of military force, an AUMF, but that has not occurred here. If we do see something that's an AUMF that gets passed, that would open the door for much larger actions to take place, such as with the Marines that are there, and not just in limited strikes and things, but actually you could look to see regime change occurring if the legal precedent is set up with the AUMF. And obviously that would be traditional, but nothing has really been that traditional lately. So why now? Why Venezuela? Venezuela is strategically important for the U.S. in terms of our hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere security, narcotics interdiction, migration flows, and then, as we talked about in the very beginning, okay, the Russia-China presence in energy resources. The Trump administration is under a lot of pressure, domestic pressure, especially from portions of the Republican base, because they ran on this, right? They ran on counter-migration against, illegal immigrants coming in, against narcotics, law and order, all these things like that, and they ran on the promise to be tough on illicit networks, border security, Latin American threats. So Venezuela really comes in and becomes the focal point in this case. Now, from the Venezuelan side, their regime sees the U.S. pressure as existential, right? For us, we see it as, the Trump administration rallying their base. But for Maduro, he sees it as existential, as he should, meaning that loss of control, sanctions, potential regime change, like he's dead, he's gone, right? Cut its head off, get rid of all those people, put in a new regime. All right. So they're mobilizing, they're arming militias, they're building a massive defense narrative. And he's also telling his people that they're not just attacking us. If they attack us, they're attacking Russia and China. Not necessarily, but definitely Russia and China would not let this thing go. Okay, yeah, Jill says yes, unprecedented, yes. Okay, got it. Okay, all right, but thank you for adding that. Let's go ahead and watch another video here. Let's check this out. If I can master the old tech I used to know how to do really well. Okay, here we go. Okay, and this is John Mearsheimer. He is an economist professor, and he's going to analyze this geopolitical situation for us really quickly. I thought this was really informative. So pay attention to what he has to say in this first minute or so. It's really good.
We're witnessing a dangerously tense situation that could change the global balance we've known for decades. The United States is ramping up its rhetoric against Venezuela, but what many Americans fail to grasp is that Venezuela is no longer just a small, distant nation in our hemisphere. It's now a critical hub in a shifting geopolitical landscape, one where Russia and China are drawing lines America has never faced before. China has poured billions into Venezuela's oil sector, while Russia has military advisors and long-standing strategic ties on the ground. These aren't mere gestures, they're binding commitments. And here's the alarming part. Washington is still using strategies from the 1980s, acting as if we can move unilaterally in Latin America without repercussions, while Moscow and Beijing quietly consolidate a network of nations tired of US dominance. Any military action against Caracas would not just be about confronting Maduro, it would be a direct challenge to Russian and Chinese interests. That kind of test could spark responses we are unprepared for, from economic blowback that disrupts markets to military maneuvers that edge us closer to direct confrontation between nuclear powers. This isn't a story about a single country anymore. It's a question of whether we're willing to risk a potential global conflict based on outdated assumptions about American supremacy. To understand how we reach this point, we need to look back, because the Venezuelan crisis didn't happen overnight. It's the result of decades of American foreign policy choices that alienated our neighbors and pushed them toward our rivals. The roots of today's crisis go back to 1999, when Hugo Chavez became Venezuela's president. Washington faced a choice.
All right. So you see, this goes back for decades, as Professor Mearsheimer, John Mearsheimer, is saying there, and it goes all the way back to 1999 when Hugo Chavez became the Venezuelan president. Okay. And so it's not just an all of a sudden thing, but what he's saying is that, just give you an example, and really of how long drawn out foreign policy decisions can lead to the reality of today. We chose not to embrace Hugo Chavez for a lot of reasons. Okay. Without, going into too much detail right now. But as a result of that, when, like I said earlier about China, development without the lecture, right? Remember I said that? I said, China is an example of development, giving them money, investing billions, protecting their interest in this oil reserve and this energy reserve in Venezuela, okay? And giving them a foothold in the Western Hemisphere, all right? But the development without the lectures, meaning the U.S. will lecture you, want you to change for human rights, all these things like that. China doesn't care. China is very pragmatic. When there were problems in the oil production, problems in their economy, China extended loans, rewrote terms, was very patient and pragmatic, because they knew the Chinese always play the long game, okay? And so, they know that a leader won't see probably results in their lifetime, but they'll set them up for the next generation to succeed, okay? And so, but the U.S. didn't do that. The U.S., again, I think a lot of it has to do, maybe not a lot, but has a significant portion has to do with our election cycle every 4 years, right? For presidents, getting reelected. So you have to show results right away. To me, it's almost not unlike being a publicly traded stock. The board and the CEO need to show, value to shareholders immediately, often, every year, right? And so the decisions they make, unlike the Chinese, which are playing the long game consistently, will be sometimes, good for today, not so great for tomorrow. Maybe they get you a win in your values protecting your values and what you think is suitable at home, but while you're sacrificing a pragmatic solution abroad, or just seeing that, hey, their country's not like our country. So anyway, giving you guys an idea of why this is happening and why it's shaking out the way it has. And let's talk a little bit more about this before we jump in another video. So we talked a bit about, why what Venezuela sees as a threat from the U.S. and some of the tension and trigger points. The U.S. strikes on the vessels that we claim that they're carrying drugs. These have already occurred, right? So we've killed about 83 people, they said so far. That's what the number is that we heard just on the news. So this has caused Venezuela to mobilize their military, their paramilitary, and they have a large-scale militia enrollment going on right now. They're conducting defensive exercises, and they think that this U.S. buildup could really lead to something, okay? I think they feel in this case that this isn't just a bluff. We don't know. They don't know which direction it could go, okay? I think probably a lot of us watching the whole thing unfold don't know which way it's going to go, honestly, okay? But that is also something that happens when you have leadership that doesn't always have consistent open decision making, right? That it's, for example, President Trump calling for nuclear testing right before he has a meeting with President Xi, right? Now there's probably a method to his madness, crazy like a fox, all those type of things, right? But again, it does cause some vibration and some chaos and some uncertainty and tension in the international arena, which also has shocks into the economy as well too, okay? And we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to use Bitcoin as an example and talk about the prices in Bitcoin, but also in potential AI bubble in the economy. And this is one of the things that impacts price in the economy, not just the froth and not just, the bubble, so to speak, but you have actual numbers, factual things going on for supply and demand, people holding assets, people selling assets because they need money due to inflation, all these things. But then you also have risk, right? Political tension, international problems, things like that cause uncertainty in the overall environment and cause prices to go down or, to go up depending on what's going on. So if you have the perfect storm of both things, people selling things because they need wealth itself, you can't buy things just by holding wealth, right? You can't pay off your bills. You can't buy new stuff. You can't, do anything with it. So you have to sell off assets and sell off value in order to have this money to pay things off, right? And so when people prick the bubble, that's when the bubble bursts, right? Because they need cash. And so combine that with uncertainty in the international environment and you get a lot of problems, all right? So Latin American neighbors are also worried about, precedent, escalation, sovereignty issues, things like that. I mean, for example, we saw that earlier, we talked about last week, Colombia cut off intelligence sharing with the U.S., as did the United Kingdom as well, too. Like I said last week, probably not a big impact on us at all, I think, as Marco Rubio had said. But nonetheless, this is their way of protesting what we were doing, okay? And so what have we already done? We've already done sanctions and designations. We've designated the Cartel de los Soles, the Cartel of the Suns, as a global terrorist organization. Okay, and guess who sits at the top of Cartel de los Soles? President Maduro. Okay, so if you didn't know that, Maduro is allegedly the head of this. Okay, and so what does that mean, the Cartel of the Suns? Well, the Cartel of the Suns represents the symbol that is on the Venezuelan uniform, military uniform, okay? And so they're basically saying this is the cartel of the military officers, all right? So not unlike some of the Mexican drug cartels that have military officials in them as well too, but this is by and large officials of the Venezuelan government, okay, drug trafficking, illicit operations, narco-terrorism, you name it, all these things like that. Okay. And so we'll go into that a little more later. But I didn't realize that until I prepped for this show. Okay. So to me, that was news that I didn't really realize that, Maduro also, did you know this? Tell me in the chat if you knew this, but he has a $50 million reward on his head. Okay. And it was in Spanish, so I couldn't read exactly what they said, but there's a $50 million reward on Maduro's head. Okay, so Jill, you say Colombia reverted, started sharing again. Okay, got it. Interesting. Yeah, Steve, that's right. Lots of profit taking. Yep, tax art brokers. Exactly. You might be right, Steve. Exactly. Tax harvesting. They want those bonuses. 100%. You're right. Shave off a little profits right now, but we'll talk about that more later. Okay, so they have a global terrorist organization designation. So they've done sanctions, done designation. This is what the U.S. has done already. Military deployment. Around mid-2025, U.S. has deployed naval assets, as you all know, off the coast of Venezuela and the Caribbean. Destroyers, amphibious assault ships, submarines, carrier group. The Gerald R. Ford is there in the Western Atlantic, the Caribbean. Some of the boat strikes, incidentally, are in the Eastern Pacific, or on the other coast. Okay, I think most of the boat strikes occurred there. If I'm not right, or if I'm not wrong about that. So we've done the kinetic strikes. We said air missile strikes on vessels, allegedly smuggling drugs. And also on October 15th of this year, President Trump confirmed the CIA had been authorized to conduct lethal operations inside Venezuela. Okay. So, and we've also started a new task force. We launched Operation Southern Spear. Okay. And we've announced we're focusing on counter narcotics, narco trafficking networks in the Caribbean and Latin America. Okay. So what has not been done so far, and what remains ambiguous? Okay. A full-scale amphibious invasion or large conventional land incursion into Venezuela by U.S. forces has not been initiated. Okay. Publicly initiated. I don't think it's been initiated at all. There's no formal declaration of war, all right, by the U.S., although we do have the non-international armed conflict notification, all right, which on TV I saw some congressmen getting very upset about that. And the exact rules of engagement and the legal basis under international law, it remains very contested. Okay, I'm sure we have we've got some very intense opinions about that out there. So there's a lot not that hasn't been done. Okay, and it's also unclear whether the U.S. objective is regime change, overthrowing Maduro, or simply degrading the drug networks. We don't know what that is. Okay, applying pressure and things like that. But let's check out another video here. Okay, that'll paint the picture a little bit better for us. If I can find it in the million things I have open here. All right. Okay, here we go.
Breaking news, Iran is sending drones to Venezuela for Venezuela to use in potential strikes against American warships. If the U.S. decides on Venezuela, this could turn into a major international crisis. Venezuelan officials said, "We are almost certainly in need of these Iranian drones with a range of 1,000 kilometers." But it's not just Iran. China is also preparing to send military equipment to Venezuela, meaning the U.S. could be facing a serious fight if tensions escalate. Just a week ago, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro sent a letter directly to China. Ironically, that letter was intercepted by the U.S., revealing what was inside. In the message, Venezuela asked for expanded military cooperation between Venezuela and China. Russia has already supplied Venezuela with air defense systems, missiles, and other weapons. It's very likely that Russia's allies, China and Iran, will also continue sending military support to Venezuela. Whether this situation becomes a serious challenge for the United States or just another manageable conflict remains to be seen. If you like the video, make sure.
Okay. So we see that the plot thickens, right? So we're seeing that not just Russia and China, but now Iran's trying to get involved as well. I mean, did we think that they wouldn't? Like Professor Mearsheimer, like John Mearsheimer said, like the former ambassador to Venezuela said, okay, we're playing with a lot bigger situation than just U.S. Venezuela. You have Russia and China that have huge strategic interests in the area, especially as we pulled back and we left a vacuum in Venezuela, except for, a lot of hard talk and sanctions and things like that. This was a thorn in our side, in our backyard in the Western Hemisphere, which traditionally in the 80s, I should say, as far as the 80s, 90s, and so on, we had typically dominated, had freedom of action the whole time. And now that has really changed. We still have freedom of action right now, but if we push this and turn this into something else, what does that mean? What is it going to mean? What are the results? What's going to happen? Okay, this is the big question. The big question is what's next? And many people want to know that. And as much as the Trump administration has said, and President Trump, he campaigned on, that we're not going to have any wars. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that, right? We're not going to get involved in any foreign entanglements. Well, or any foreign wars. And here we are basically posturing for war. Okay. We have the full capability to smash them, cut the head off, regime change, all those things. Okay. But are we going to do it? That's the big question. And I personally don't think so, but I don't know. Okay. The capability is definitely there. All right. So how plausible, though, are these military scenarios? So what are the plausible military scenarios that can happen? Number one, continued maritime airstrikes interdictions. Most likely this is what's going to happen. Okay. This scenario involves U.S. using the Navy, air assets, surface assets as well, too, to keep on blowing these vessels out of the water, possibly special operations forces, going up against some limited duration strikes inside of the country itself to take out high value targets, things like that are related to the narco trafficking. Now, as I said, okay, because I think many of us, when we hear, okay, they're a, narco-terrorist group, this Cartel of the Suns, and also Tren Agua. Okay, great. Nobody wants drugs in the streets. Everyone believes that. That's, that makes sense. But when you realize that they're saying President Maduro is the head of the Cartel de los Soles, does that make him fair game? Yes, it does. It makes him fair game. His officials, fair game. Okay. So therefore, you have the ability to argue that you could use whatever force is necessary in order to protect the United States. Okay. And there's some legal authorities and articles, things like that allow for that to be a defensible position. Okay. And we're going to talk about that some more too. And most people think that this is the most likely scenario, is that it's going to be airstrikes, drone strikes, surface missile strikes against boats and limited strike targets. But again, if we're going after leadership, okay, then is that not in effect, in essence, regime change? Okay. And the thing to think about too is that Maduro has offered to step down, according to the sources that I have, right? I'm learning this as I go with you guys. All right. I'm not a super expert in Venezuela, although I play one on TV and on YouTube. Okay. So I've done my research, and the research I have says that he's saying he would step down, but we've rejected that. So knowing that, then what is really the end state? If we don't, if we're not accepting that, we want him to step down now. And again, he did lose an election. He lost the election, but has remained in power. So maybe what we're asking for is him to step down immediately. But then what? As we've seen before, sometimes the one that steps down, the next one that comes up is even worse than the one who stepped down. Okay. So I think that's a little bit of fear as well, too. Now, the next thing that could happen is precision strikes inside Venezuela on regime infrastructure. So we could move from maritime interdiction to those strikes inside Venezuela, not just on people, though, okay, or on narco groupings of terrorists and terrorist leaders, as we say, terrorist leaders, right? What we're calling them, but on air bases, radar sites, command centers, infrastructure that's seen as supporting the regime, which is also supporting trafficking. That's the logic. You see that because the regime, the Cartel of the Suns is the regime, but it's also the narco-terrorist group. That's what we're saying. Okay. So if everybody, that makes sense, everybody? Okay. All right. Put in the chat if you have any questions on this, and we will discuss it. Okay. So here's the thing is that we're getting into risk about crossing over the sovereignty line. Okay. We're crossing over the lines of sovereignty. Also, Venezuela has some formidable air defense systems, so we're taking risk of getting shot down, loss of equipment, loss of life, all these things that would complicate the entire thing. All right, so this is escalating now to a near war footing for sure. And most likely we'll have regional backlash, diplomatic backlash. So Venezuela is already enjoying diplomatic cover from Russia and China from all of this. All right. And so let's talk about the idea of a full amphibious assault from the U.S. Marine Corps, okay, with the Army probably involved as well too. This is the least possible, okay? So why is this the least possible? Well, it's a very high risk, low probability for several reasons. So Venezuela has significant defense capabilities, first of all, okay? And, you know, it's even though we would smash them, I'm sure, with airstrikes, things like that, the idea that we're going to get away scot-free without any casualties, it's just not going to happen, okay, in something like this. An opposed amphibious assault, amphibious landing is pretty brutal, very violent, all those things. Usually there's a lot of loss of life, loss of equipment, loss of infrastructure, things like that. So, but again, the current policy for the administration, or what President Trump campaigned on, is the America First. There's a real reluctance to actually, for large-scale occupation, for boots on the ground. You know, maybe for something that is, you know, counterinsurgency or humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, again, the operations other than war, but major large-scale occupation, regime change, things like that. I think that wouldn't be something that would be supportable at home, okay? There's a heavy strategic and political cost for that, regional condemnation, Latin American instability, potential afterwards occupation with counterinsurgency work, which is a nightmare, okay, which will really entangle us and cause us to be sucked in, as the old word goes, into the old quagmire, the Vietnam quagmire, the Iraq quagmire, all those things. We don't need any more quagmires, that's for sure, okay? So, and there are also logistical challenges as well, too. The amphibious landing itself is challenging. Obviously, we could do it, but, you know, you're dealing with then, if they decide to really fight and fight hard, if the casualties pile up, this will be a political defeat at home, okay? Even though we may not lose the war or may not lose the battles, we will lose President Trump will be losing at home tremendous support, okay? And it'll put a black eye on U.S. prestige, U.S. power, vis-a-vis, you know, in the face of China and in Russia and on the world stage, okay? So I think we have real capability for it, and we could do it. And if this were an existential threat, like a World War II or World War III, hell yeah, we're going to do it. But for this, you know, when you think about what do we want, okay? And this is always the question that gets down to, what do we want out of this? And that's what we're going to cover here in a second, okay? But keep in mind, the first question you have to ask yourself in a strategy is, what do you want? What do you want to get out of it? Okay, when I work with my clients, I work with my, you know, all my clients in my coaching membership or my one-on-one clients, one of the first things we figure out is, what do you want? What's important now? What direction are you trying to take, right? What are the micro changes or major changes you need to make in order to get from where you are now to where you want to be, okay? So these are the considerations also to take in strategy. So the ends, ways, and means. What's the end state? What is the end state of all this? Okay? What are we trying to do? And here we go. Let's see. Although this may not answer that question, but it'll answer something.
So the world's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, is now moving in the waters of the Caribbean, intensifying the administration's maximum pressure campaign on drug cartels. The Maduro regime in Venezuela. Lucas Tomlinson is live in Trinidad, Tobago with the latest. Lucas.
Good morning, Brian. It's the largest buildup of U.S. forces in the Caribbean since the invasion of Grenada in '83 or the invasion of Panama in 1989. At the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Levitt says President Trump continues to review military options for Venezuela, both against the drug cartels and the Maduro regime.
Now the president is very interested in taking additional measures against the drug cartels. He's been very clear about that. He's spoken about it, and this is a promise that he made to the American public. He has taken unprecedented action to do so.
Since early September, when combat operations began here in the Caribbean, over 20 suspected drug boats have been destroyed, killing over 80 people. Now this is a named op, Operation Southern Spear. The vanguard, as you mentioned, Brian, the USS Gerald R. Ford. She arrived this week in the Caribbean.
Okay, like one thing he's saying there, this is a named op. It becomes a big deal when it's a named operation, okay? Just so you all know that. But this is a named operation now. I believe it's Southern Spear, as he was saying. Rewind this for 1 second.
As you mentioned, Brian, now this is a named op, Operation Southern Spear. The vanguard, as you mentioned, Brian, the USS Gerald R. Ford. She arrived this week in the Caribbean with 4 squadrons of F-18 Super Hornets aboard. Those are strike aircraft, as most of our audience already knows. Ford's 3 destroyer escorts are armed with dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles ready to strike deep inside Venezuela. Also at sea, Marines aboard the amphibious assault ship Iwo Jima have been doing fast rope training. And here in Trinidad, Marines from warships offshore have been practicing seizing airfields like this on the island, located just 7 miles from Venezuela. And that training ends today, and those Marines will return to their ships and be placed on alert, ready to go ashore in Venezuela if ordered, Brian.
Wow, exciting stuff. Something's got to come.
Okay, so what does that all mean? And first of all, what are the options? Let's talk about the options. So again, if we're looking for a regime change, then, the Marines are a good option for that as well. Strikes, special operations strikes, all those things like that. Okay. Will definitely get the job done. Okay. But what are some of the options that the Marine Corps has? When we talk about an amphibious assault, what would that actually look like? Okay. So, this would flip, first of all, understand this would flip the legal and political frame from covert limited operations versus cartels to overt interstate warfare, okay? Which runs into much higher legal issues, political friction, all that stuff, okay? So let's talk about what this would actually look like, okay? First of all, the basic framework for this is that there's Article 2 plus the war powers, okay? And so, as I told you, this has been called a non-international armed conflict with drug cartels operating in and around Venezuela, okay? And this was sent under the War Powers Resolution, all right, which the U.S. forces are in hostilities, but without a specific new AUMF, the authorization for the use of military force, okay? So, again, it's only shaped up right now that we probably couldn't really do a major amphibious landing. If you saw that AUMF get approved, then, all bets are off, and that could actually definitely happen. Okay. The president's Article 2 authority is self-defense authority. Okay. Now he's using it against the drug cartels causing to cause all the strikes and do things like that. So this is what the DOJ is saying. His legal counsel is saying that the strikes are lawful as an exercise of the president's Article 2 self-defense authority. All right. That's where that's coming from. Just for everyone's essay, your situational awareness on the situation. Okay, and so let's talk about what would this look like for a Marine Corps amphibious assault. So there are a few different options the Marines could have, okay? And first of all, there are limited action raids. Like they could do a helicopter assault, a helicopter raid, boat raids, Amtrak raids with the tracked amphibious vehicles, okay? Amphibious assault vehicles. They could do all these raids, things like that. They could seize airfields. You heard them mention that in the news clip. Seizing airfields, right? They could seize, the port. They could do all those things like that. They could do, they could all land ashore and conduct full-scale assaults on the cities, things like that, okay? On limited objectives, though, because contrary to popular belief, it's not, the force that's there is not a massive amphibious force, okay? I believe that it's probably a Marine Expeditionary Unit that's off the coast right now that definitely could do some work, but it's not like the style of like a World War II Iwo Jima or anything like that, Incheon, any of the very famous amphibious assaults that happened. The force is much smaller. Okay. And so I think knowing that that's probably, if they went that route to using the Marines, then that is most likely what would happen. Okay. They have an amphibious assault, amphibious raid, amphibious demonstration. Sometimes they use that to cause a deception plan to fix the enemy in place and make them think that the amphibious assault is going to happen, but it doesn't happen. Okay, we don't do it. There's also amphibious withdrawal, where you pull out a force by sea. Okay, that's another thing they can do. And then humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, as I said. So what I want to say is that if the U.S. ever invaded Venezuela, okay, the big unit fights would be over fast for sure. The U.S. would crush them. U.S. air and naval power would dismantle most of the conventional resistance almost immediately. And the real war would really start after the regime officially collapsed. We'd install a temporary regime after that, and then you're going to have urban guerrilla attacks, jungle warfare, jungle sanctuaries, narco-criminal underworld network attacks, fighting, things like that, and militias that would morph into this insurgency, and we'd be tied down again, okay? We'd end up doing counterinsurgency in the cities and in the jungle alongside this new fragile government, and not just a clean topple them, get in there, knock them off, regime change, and leave, okay? Because if you break it, you got to fix it. That's one thing we've really learned, all right? And that's honestly, I think something that no one wants to get involved with right now. So for me personally, I don't see this as posturing and no threat at all, okay? I think it's a real capability. There is the threat of it, but I don't see us as doing a full-scale amphibious assault or a big, huge regime change, because we've learned so many times that once we do that, we have to go in, we have to fix it, and really, we're probably going to pressure them to do their own leadership change, possibly having Maduro step down, dismantling of the narco-terrorist, the terrorist organization in the Cartel de los Soles, or having it officially go underground, right? Something to that effect that shows visible official results, while understanding that they're probably still going to be operating in some way, shape, or form. These things don't go away. They're like cockroaches. They don't go away as easy as you think, okay? So, all right, let's check out this next one.
We move on now to the U.S. military build-off off Venezuela. Tonight here, newly released images of U.S. Marines conducting training missions, including live fire exercises. What is the president now planning? And ABC's Matt Rivers off Venezuela for us again tonight.
New images tonight showing U.S. Marines training here in Trinidad and Tobago. Multiple Osprey aircraft carrying out joint exercises with the local military as the U.S. ramps up pressure on Venezuela. For weeks, Marines from the same unit conducting live fire training operations across the Caribbean. Harrier fighter jets bombing targets. It comes as the New York Times reports President Trump signed off on additional covert CIA operations inside Venezuela that could lay the groundwork for a bigger military campaign, citing multiple people briefed on the matter. The president saying this week he is not ruling out putting U.S. troops on the ground in Venezuela.
I don't rule out anything. We just have to take care of Venezuela.
The Times also reporting Trump authorized a new round of back-channel negotiations with Venezuela's president Nicolas Maduro, who reportedly offered to...
Okay, so just so everybody understands this, so negotiations are that much more effective when you have a carrier battle group off the shore and you're conducting strikes, putting pressure on them, causing them to have fear, causing them to have internal problems, pressure on the leadership, dissension in the ranks, fear causes the group to break up, cohesion falls apart for the leaders, supply chain problems, logistic problems, all these things like that. Okay, so, if you notice how we said we're not really putting out boots on the ground, of course, this is a threat, right? Is it a credible threat? It's a threat. It's credible. The capability is there. But the intention, now he's opening up back channel negotiations. He's trying to leave an off-ramp for Maduro to go away, get out of there. I can't imagine. I don't know. We're probably going to end up with our hands on him somehow unless they cut some kind of a deal, okay? President Trump has said for years he is the deal maker, always talks about making deals, so let's see what happens. But as I've heard so many times, from ambassadors, I think even Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, he was so smart during the negotiations in Paris, had full-scale operations, pressuring our forces, winning battles during the negotiation. So, and naively, when I was younger, before I'd really had a big career in the military, I thought, well, we're doing negotiations. Shouldn't there be a ceasefire? That doesn't really that doesn't really give the advantage to one side or the other. Sometimes it does if they have the ceasefire and they already have one side already has a lot of gains and has the upper hand, right? But if you want the upper hand in negotiation, it usually is beneficial to be the one putting pressure on. So the other side, you're changing their interests, you're changing what their best alternative to a negotiated agreement is, their bottom line is, all these things like that, okay? So that's, in my opinion, what we really see going on. While the back channel's opening up, they're putting tremendous pressure on them, and that's what I would say, what I think is going on, okay? Let's keep going. Let's keep listening to this, though.
Stepped down after a few years, but the White House rejected that plan.
David, as far as the end game here, many experts say.
And maybe we didn't hear that, but here, this is the part where he says
reportedly offered to
that Maduro offered to step down.
Stepped down after a few years, but the White House rejected that plan.
David, as far as the end game here, many experts say, sure, it can be about stopping drugs in this part of the world, but it's also very likely about more than that. It's very likely about forcing President Maduro from power one way or another.
Good ending there, Matt Rivers. One way or another. Matt Rivers. Good job. All right. So that's what I think is going on over there. We'll cover a few more things here. Let me see if I have any other videos to show on this, because I can go on and on and on. We could talk about what does it mean for Special Operations Forces, Title 50 versus Title 10 authorities, okay, all those things like that. But I think we are going to go on and on and on. And instead, we are going to have a quick word from our sponsors right now. The awesome Ben Pappas company, still sponsoring us. We're doing a great job with that. All right, guys. So like I've talked about so many times before, in strategy, the first thing is that we have to get very clear and focused about what we want, right? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to get done? And the great thing is this, that you can accelerate the change you make, the transformation, the change in your life, accelerate your achievement of your goals by having a coach, by having a mentor, okay? By having all these things. And that's what I offer in my one-on-one coaching, okay? So if you feel like you're stuck right now, or you feel like you've hit a point where you're having so much friction and you want someone to work with, and the things that I've talked about, you feel I'd be a good fit for you to work with me, just reach out, okay? Go ahead and click the link in my bio, book a no-fee discovery and strategy session with me, and we'll get on a call. We'll figure it out. We'll pick a time and we'll figure out what's going on, okay? Make an assessment and create a strategy that will help you to have clarity on your situation and make a strategy and a plan going forward. Okay. So again, click the link in my bio. It's on Instagram, also in YouTube. You can schedule this no fee discovery and strategy session with me. And if you choose to work with me, awesome. If not, I get a chance to serve. So it's no cost to you. Go ahead and do that. And then on top of that, if you're not looking for something as intense as the one-on-one coaching with me, but you'd like to be involved in a community, a positive, supportive community that really holds you accountable in a positive and supportive way. You have daily interactions with them, weekly interactions, and also a monthly live group coaching session. Then take a look at my coaching membership and community, my Ferocious Optimist community and live group coaching membership that goes once a month. We just had a session last night. Absolutely awesome. I'm not sure if we have any of the members out there that were there last night in the chat, but fantastic, man. What a great session we had last night. I taught for about an hour and 15 minutes, and we did about 45 minutes of Q&A. And the cool thing is this, we're live on a private Zoom call. So we see each other, hear each other. We're talking the whole time. Okay. And on top of that, if you missed a session, you can always go to the replay. I post the replay in the members area. I also give you the notes that I coach from. I give you my presentation that I coach from. We covered the gambit last night, from doing deep breathing exercises, power breathing exercises, all the way through building an unstoppable mindset, learning how to control your mental focus, regulate your emotions so you reach your top operational attitude and energy, what I call your power state. Okay. So I teach all of these things. We're going to talk about, power habits, how to get ahead, personal finance, physical fitness, all these different things in order to give you the energy and the attitude and the mindset to get from where you are now to where you want to be, to get unstuck and get to your next level. Okay. So again, if you're interested in that, check that out. That is my group coaching membership and community, my Ferocious Optimist community. The link is in my bio, just in YouTube and also in Instagram. You can also go to benpappas.com. Again, go to benpappas.com and you'll see in the drop-down menus, all these things are there. as well too. And feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. And let's get back into it. Here we go. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the economy and just what is going on over here. Okay. There's a lot of stuff happening. Let's hear it. Talking about Bitcoin right now.
So this is a quick emergency update video about what's happening to the...
Oh no, you guys know right now I'm not liking this emergency update video about Bitcoin. Uh-oh. Okay, let's hear what's happening. Let's go. Let's see. What does he have to say?
Market, because AI stocks are selling off and Bitcoin is selling off, and it's sort of leading the way for this huge correction. Now, even if you're not interested in Bitcoin, I think you should still watch this video, because Bitcoin tends to be a leading indicator for what's about to happen. And Bitcoin already started to go down before the rest of the market. And there's a couple of different theories of why this is happening, and each of them is extremely interesting. But arguably the most interesting one that I've seen is coming from this technical point of view. And again, credit to Benjamin Cowan for this. If you don't follow him, go check out his YouTube channel. It's fascinating. And one of the most interesting things I've learned from him is this. When the price of Bitcoin falls below something called the 50-week moving average, the bull cycle, aka the good days, are over. That 50-week average price for this cycle was roughly $103,000, which we crossed a couple weeks ago. And that was enough.
No. I'm crying right now. You guys are all laughing. Oh no. What's he talking about? This non-believer? Strike him down. He doesn't know what he's saying. But unfortunately, he does. But I want to say this, okay? So I watched a bunch of other stuff. You know me, I'm obsessing about this. And the thing is this, that what I want to say to all of you is, if you haven't gotten into Bitcoin yet, this is your time over the next few weeks. Take a look. If the bull run is down, and you got some money somewhere, I don't care if you're going to buy this much. This is the time, okay? It went from 126,000 to 83,000, okay? Yes, it did. If you're a Bitcoin investor, I'm just going to say, you got to be ready for the ups and the downs. You got to be ready for the G. You know, you're riding the rocket. Like Michael Saylor said, if you're going to strap yourself onto the rocket, be ready to feel the G's, okay? And so do I think it'll go back up? Yeah, 100% I do, okay? Almost no doubt. And here's why. Institutional investing is still happening. Big whale investors are still pouring in, okay? What's happening right now is this bubble's bursting because small investors, the small wallets, they watch that news of the 50% mark that, you know, what's his face there just talked about, okay? I don't mean any disrespect, but I can't remember his name. And they all saw, oh my God, we're hitting that point. Sell. Don't sell, okay? First of all, don't buy Bitcoin if you think you're going to need to sell it and you think you're going to need it to pay your groceries. Don't buy it, okay? Invest in something else, or just, you know, keep money in a war chest. But if you're investing in Bitcoin, be ready, okay? It's going to, and I just saw a similar report from another big investor that said by June, Bitcoin's hitting 250,000, because this is the process. It goes up for a while, it does a little correction, and everyone says, oh my God, run away. And then people buy on the dip down here. It's been dipped for, you know, a little bit now, for about a week or two. People pour into it, and it's going to skyrocket back up again, okay? So, you know, I'm just saying. And there's some people that say it's going to go to 60,000, 50,000. Honestly, I hope so. If it does, I'm going to buy. There you go, okay? And I'm going to ride the ship all the way down. Whatever happens, happens. But that's the attitude you have to have. In a lot of ways, you got to be ready, and you have to be only invest into this what you're not worried about, okay, which you don't need right now. So please. But if you're not into Bitcoin yet, you're not, and I won't say crypto, I'm saying Bitcoin, right? Because I don't advise going into all the other ones. I just don't, okay? I think Ethereum's pretty good. I think Solana's pretty good. And that's about it. But I'm personally, I'm a Bitcoin pure. That's me, all right? And so I think you have to be ready for the ups and downs, but this is a great time to buy. It was at 126, it's at 83. If you thought about it and you have the means to, okay, this would be a good time, all right? I don't advise buying on margin. I know some people talk about it. I don't advise that either. But what his point is that as Bitcoin goes, the economy is in tandem now. We're seeing a real pegging of the economy, not pegging, but a tandem movement of the economy and Bitcoin, okay? And so I'm looking at my watch to make sure I'm not going to go too late. But they're moving in tandem much more now. And as the AI bubble is frothing up, I have a video that I watched earlier from Ray Dalio, the CEO of Bridgewater Funds Investments. Okay. Hey, Joe Saunders, what's going on, man? Shout out to you out there, brother. Thanks for being here. And so, but Ray Dalio said, basically, he said, we are in a bubble territory in AI stocks. Okay. And in a lot of others as well, too. And so what happens is as people have this inflated value of the price and they start selling it off to pay for things, now the price just starts going down, right? We're popping the bubble. It's getting, it's getting deflated. Okay. It's different than the mortgage crisis in 2008. It's because people could not pay on the mortgages and the loans that were loaned to them. Okay. It's a different type of bubble. The froth is for different reasons. Okay. So that's what's going on there. Let's watch another video here. And we're going to talk a little video from, I believe, let me see. I think it's from Warren Buffett. Let's see what he has to say here. Okay, here we go. So even though there's a bubble, guess what this guy's doing?
Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway disclosing a big position in Google's parent company, Alphabet, the tune of about $4.3 billion.
So true to form, Warren Buffett is buying when everything's down. He's a contrarian investor. This is how fortunes are made. This is how wealth is made. And I will tell you one thing President Trump said, okay? One thing President Trump said a while ago, when everyone said the economy's going crazy, he said, yeah, the economy's going crazy. He said the people who are going to get killed are people who are afraid. And he said, you can build a fortune. This is the time you can build a fortune. So the kind of the conspiracy theory side of me, even though I told you guys I don't really subscribe to a lot of these things, but it makes me think, okay, he's got crypto, he's in gold, he's in all these things, right? He's in all kinds of stocks, construction, you name it, right? Does he know what he's doing in order to cause certain things to be happening in the markets? Or he knows it's happening, it's also part of his policy, so who cares? Meanwhile, his own assets are going up, or he's buying, lowering his dollar cost average for these assets. And then when it all goes away, take the pressure off, the tariffs off, starts going back up. Made millions or just billions, okay? Zillions, trillions, whatever you want to say. Okay, so I'm just saying, pay attention to leadership speeches, what they say, pay attention to big market movements, pay attention to the bubbles, things like that, and just think what would make sense for you to do now. And I will say this, in good times, pay down your debt. In bad times, make sure you're cutting expenses right now, okay? And if you can, invest in some assets, pick up some cheap assets, pick up some cheap stocks, buy some cheap businesses. I say cheap businesses as stocks, right? Or, pick up some crypto. Bitcoin is what I recommend. It's the most stable of all of them, okay? And by the way, Bitcoin is still up since last October, year over year, October to October, it's still up significantly, like 50%, okay? And it's historically averaged 50% gain every year. That's better than almost every asset class out there, okay? So it's better than gold. Gold's averaging like 12% a year, even in times like this. So it's beating a lot of things. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox about that. And you guys know what time it is. It is time for the leadership lessons of South Park. I wonder what happens in the podcast when they listen to this on Apple Podcasts. This is on Apple Podcasts, by the way. I wonder. They hear this like, what is going on? They listen to like Kenny's voice and Cartman and everybody. All right, let's get right into it. We got the speed round here. I think this is a good one. Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Wow, there's a lot about Thanksgiving I never knew before. Yeah, History Channel rules.
But was the first Thanksgiving really just about pilgrims and Indians from space? Or was there something more? Shocking new evidence suggests that the first Thanksgiving might also have been haunted.
There is certainly no evidence that the first Thanksgiving dinner was not haunted.
The pilgrims welcomed the Indians, but did they also unknowingly welcome spirits from beyond the grave?
Oh, come on!
They're supposed to be doing a project, I think, is the context of it. They're supposed to be doing some kind of project together for Thanksgiving. And so Cartman picked some like aliens at Thanksgiving at the first Thanksgiving celebration. I can't believe it's almost Thanksgiving. Next week, right? Next Thursday. We're Friday today. I don't even know what day it is. Good Lord. I swear to God, I kind of understand like what day it is because of our lives, because of these lives that we're on. That is a good one, right? So the leadership lesson there, what's the leadership lesson? The leadership lesson there is you can't believe everything you hear and see, right? Even a documentary. Listen to what that documentarian said. He said, there's certainly no evidence to prove that there weren't aliens at the first Thanksgiving, right? Of course there's not. That's hilarious, right? Oh, come on. Yeah. All right, let's check out this next one here. Here we go. Let me see. There it is. There it is. Continuation. Here we go. Oh, this is good.
Dude, have you seen that stuff about the pyramids and the link to Mars? Dude, there's a guy with a gun here. I'm just saying there's lots of symbols and signs out there that show aliens and history are pretty linked. Fool. Will you guys stop?
Just keep writing your apology. How now, Indian? Why hath thy race sent me here to Earth? Huh?
Dude!
You Indians took me to thy planet and then cast me here. Why?
Yeah, dude!
Hath thy race attacked our stuffing mines and sent me here to die? Tell me, Indian! I'm only 1/16. Hold your lying tongue! This shall prove if thou art Indian or not! Ah, he was not.
I didn't think so.
Into the wheeled chariot that strucketh me! We must make haste to Cape Cod!
Who's this?
This is Natalie. Hi, guys.
All right, I guess that's the alien proving that there was an alien at Thanksgiving. The leadership lesson here is black swan events do occur. Black swan events occur, okay? Like COVID, black swan event. Turns out maybe it wasn't as much a black swan event as we thought, but black swan events do occur, okay? There could have been an alien. And boy, we're going to get back to aliens, I think, soon. I think since I've been taking my eye off the ball on the aliens, this 3I Atlas asteroid's hurtling towards us, and I haven't told you guys about it. Who knows what's going to happen? It's going to rip our atmosphere off as it goes by, and we're going to be plunged into the land of Thundar the Barbarian. If you know Thundar the Barbarian, I know how old you are. Okay, if you watched Thundar the Barbarian on Saturday mornings with Ukla the Mock, and Princess Ariel, the whole cast. Oh yeah, I know them. I know all of them. Okay, tell me in the chat if you know Thundar the Barbarian. And I just want to know. I want to tell you you're super cool if you know Thundar the Barbarian. If you're listening to this on the replay, put it in a comment if you know Thundar the Barbarian. If you're on Apple Podcast, just damn it, write to me, ben@benpappas.com. Again, ben@benpappas.com. Tell me I know Thundar the Barbarian. Okay? Very important. Black Swan events do occur. Remember that. All right, I got one more for you guys because we're having an abbreviated show tonight. So I can go to the bathroom and get ready to go over on Valhalla with Nate. And we got one more. And this one, I think I didn't even watch the whole thing. So I don't know. Hopefully it's nothing too crazy raunchy because some of these are nuts. But let's see. Let's see what we get. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. This is so bad.
We douse ourselves in pig blood because it does help us slip through the crowd when the door's open. We do it every year, part of the family tradition. Last year, we lost our youngest daughter. Her head was stepped on and crushed. But in her memory, we're going to find a young girl and
These
step
are
on
Black
her
Friday
head this
shoppers.
year. If anyone thinks they're going to beat me inside that mall and keep me from getting my kids' Christmas presents, they can kiss my fat vagina because I'm bringing the motherfucking pay. We douse ourselves in pig blood because it does help us slip through the crowd when the door's open.
I think that's replayed. Okay. Yeah, they always have a doozy for you in there, don't they? Oh, my God. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Who's ever found a damn deal on Black Friday? Literally, maybe at Best Buy, but otherwise I've never found a deal. I feel like I get ripped off on Black Friday. You're just out there bumping into everybody. I don't even go. I never go. It's so bad where I live for Black Friday. Like I can't go home. It gets so bad. I can't even go out anymore because you're stuck. But that's what you have to look forward to next Friday, Black Friday. Why is it got to be black? After Thanksgiving, okay? Why can't it be Red Friday? I don't know. Okay? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That's what's going to be happening. And I wish all of you no pain and suffering, like Jensen Huang said. I wish you all no Black Friday and just to enjoy yourselves and have a great time. All right, everybody. Hey, that is going to do it for tonight. We have a quick show tonight, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I always love hanging out with you guys and sharing some good laughs at the end. And then also, covering some of the craziness that's happening in the world. I hope you feel a little more informed now with the whole Venezuela situation. I know I sure do. Okay. And also, you have a good handle on what's happening with Bitcoin and a little better idea of what's happening out in the world of investment. The bottom line is don't sell. Okay. And like I always say, guys, believe in yourselves. I believe in you. So great to hang out with you here on Friday. Every Friday we are here. And like I always say, make yourselves better, make the world better. Have an amazing, amazing weekend. And if I don't see you for Thanksgiving, before Thanksgiving, which I don't think I will, because I'm not going to have a live this Sunday, and I have to change my live interview on Monday as well, too. I have a business trip that popped up last minute, so I will be flying out to Aruba, actually. Yes, it is a business trip, no kidding. And I'll be back before Thanksgiving. But I want you guys to go and get yours. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy yourselves, guys. So great to be here with you tonight. And I will see you probably on Black Friday, okay, for the next show. All right, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Go get yours. I will see you soon. Thanks so much for being here tonight.